Hey, everyone. Welcome to the latest podcast episode. This is your host, Terry Knight, and I have a great guest here today, Peter Roisman, Rolls Royce in the house. Talked about that before the podcast, but appreciate you for coming on, Peter. Looking forward to talk to you about real estate investing, man, the website got going on, revleasing.com, and everything between, man. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, so happy to be here, Terry. It's always stuff to talk about.
Always, always. You're in Connecticut right now. We are just talking before the podcast. You live in Puerto Rico as well, so I think you got a cool blend of where you live and enjoying life. So that's always cool to talk about and reminisce. But Peter, man, let people know who you are, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, right now I'm a guy who's been in and out of a lot of businesses over the course of a 40-year career. So I started
Okay,
my first business when I was 23, and
okay.
I didn't stop after that, and I'm involved in several right now. It's fun. I'm never gonna quit. I'll probably die working.
It sounds like me, man, because I feel like 'cause I have a 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old, and even before I had kids or a kid, um, I've always worked, and I worked very hard, and no matter what it is, like I just like to work. I think it's fulfilling, and I think you show a display in that because you had your first business at 23, which is crazy. I don't think I started mine until like way mid 20s, late 20s. I mean, it just shows where your head was at. Like you just like to work, explore, and build from there. What was your first business at 23 anyway?
So I was in law school, and
Oh,
I'd been a college golfer. And so I got a deferment from my law school dean for a year to go play golf in Florida. So that was an interesting discussion with the dean. So I went to Florida, realized I was a good golfer, but not going to make a living at golf, and it wasn't that much fun anymore. And so I basically came back and started a sports agency right at age 23 while I was in law school. And I got my first client then and built it up and ended up being brought into Octagon, which is one of the world's larger sports agencies today. And I ended up bringing some of my clients with me, and running the golf division, which was a good thing for me since I had golf background and still play golf. But that was a business I started.
holy crap! Did you end up dissolving and selling it, or how did that work? Because you working with this big ass agency, like
Yeah,
that's amazing, man.
I sort of after I left Octagon. I'd been there about 5 years. I stayed with agency and representing people for a year or two more, and I kept a couple of clients with me. And then I got out of that, and I got into the sports ticketing world, and I became president of a sports ticketing company for several years. And so I've had multiple business entrepreneurial ventures, and they've all taught me something along the way. And at this point, it's not like I'm not surprised by anything, but fewer and fewer things surprise me these days.
Yeah, exactly. And I think even with your long tenure of multiple businesses throughout your journey, times technology and things change, evolves. You got to pivot, stuff like that. Like today, you're talking about as of today, you're involved in several different companies. I want to talk to you about that. But what are those companies now as of today, and what do they do?
Yeah, so the company that I'm probably most involved day to day on is a company called Rev Leasing. And we're a property technology company. We started out as a human capital company. We actually trained people and placed them in leasing offices for multifamily investments. And this grew out of our looking at the multifamily industry and realizing that about 20% of the people we were running across were temporary agency placed people in the leasing
Right.
offices that were not properly trained or didn't have enough background in leasing to be effective. And so we said, listen, that's low hanging fruit. Let's get people from outside the industry and train them and place them. They'll get placed easily when competing against people that don't have proper training. So we started with that, and it worked pretty quickly. Our first trainee actually was offered a manager's job, assistant manager's job, within 3 weeks of her hiring. And so we built on that, and we realized, listen, this is okay, but we wanted to do more. And so we grew that
Hmm.
company into basically being one of the top two leasing companies in the country. And so a lot of multifamily. So a lot
Hmm.
of, if you think about multifamily, it's a part of commercial real estate, but it's only one tranche of commercial real estate. You've got medical, you've got the pure commercial office, you've got
Right.
retail, you've got industrial, you've got all these different areas of investment. And all of those areas have one thing in common in terms of leasing. They all have professional licensed people doing the leasing for those projects and every property in the whole industry. In multifamily, there really isn't that kind of oversight, and there is no licensing for sure. And there may be some accreditation, but it's limited. And so there's a void there in terms of the training and the oversight of this leasing position in multifamily. So we stepped into that. That's how we ended up getting into this business. And once we built, I don't know if you want to ask a question, but I mean, I'm happy to describe the whole process if you like.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, I'm curious to learn how this works because
Yeah.
I never thought about that in the multifamily as far as the leasing part and getting trained. Like you guys really thought about what's needed from the low hanging fruit and what can we implement to help, you
Yeah.
know,
It's an area
the
that
community.
had been, I don't know how it was a big oversight, but it was an oversight. And even
Hmm.
today, not enough respect is given to that position, and not enough development is given to the leasing person in the office. It's often still the least trained, the most inexperienced person is tasked with the job of generating 98, 99% of revenues. Everything that comes into that property is generated by the leasing team. And if you're putting an inexperienced person out there, it's very dangerous. It's not a great way to handle your investments. We decided to attack the problem rather than ignore the problem. And so we've attacked it by, we created this great team of a handful of people that would go out and fix properties when they hit 78% and they could not get leased up. We actually went in and fixed them. We put good leasing people on the ground, put good oversight on it, and leased them up into the 90s, and the owners were able to refinance the properties. And so we did that probably for 2 years, where we were the one of the two best leasing companies in multifamily in the country. And then we realized that we just wanted to get bigger, but we couldn't get bigger with the limitation on human capital. We would have slow growth. We would be able to add a person here, add a team here, grow a few people a year, and it just wasn't going to have the impact on the industry that we were hoping to make. And so we decided to take the skills we had and the knowledge we have to build, you know, analytics which could basically go in and assess any leasing team on any property in the country, and we could do it remotely. And we had people on the ground across the country. And so,
Nice.
with the AI analytics that we use and the people on the ground across the country to do the on-site touring, we're able to create this analysis. We
Hmm.
call it Rev Leasing score, and that is kind of a roadmap to improvement, if you will. And then on the flip side of that, we said, well, we can't just tell people they need to improve; we need to help them improve. So we built
Exactly.
130 online training courses that 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 these companies can use, basically, and we're sort of outsourcing. We're allowing people to outsource their leasing training, I guess is the best way to look at this. If
Right.
you've got a company and you need leasing training and you don't want to hire a whole leasing department and a whole training department to focus on leasing, you can actually hire us. That's why we exist.
Well, that's pretty cool, Peter. I had a question regarding that then. You mentioned lease up for businesses, and I mean, not businesses, but for multifamily. Lease ups on a range from 78 to whatever, 80%. You got them up to 90%, maybe even more, obviously.
Mhm.
That's the whole goal. You mentioned putting good leasing people in place. What does that entail? Like, what does it take, like, to put someone that good in place, and what are the outcomes? What's the
It's a great
objective?
question, Terry. So that sort of frames what our outlook is on our business. And so at this point, let me so way we made great leasing people is we basically started them from scratch and built them up. We taught them the fundamentals of leasing. And as I said, there's 130 courses. It goes over probably 10 large topics that covers some subtopics as well. So if you look at the industry today, and as I said, the focus hasn't been on leasing. It's been not on revenue generation, but on cost reduction. And so
Hmm.
on the revenue generation side, if you want to take a guess, we have this leasing score and it's on a scale of 700. We've scored over 300 properties across the country in almost all the markets. And if you want to guess what the highest score to date is, I like to ask people that because it's kind of a surprise when someone gets close to the right score.
I'll take a guess. Like score from what to what though? Like what's
700.
and you said what's the highest score?
700 is the perfect leasing score.
Well, what's the average?
I figure if you can,
I would say if 600.
okay, and what's the best, so that do you think, I think the best score we've seen to date, and I know for a fact, is 485.
Wow.
So
Okay.
a lot of room for improvement. So it basically proved, our thesis, which was there's room for improvement in the leasing and multifamily, and the focus hasn't been on it. The you know the average score is around 325, I think,
Okay.
and so basically the industry can really grow and perform better by focusing on the proper generation of revenues, or the capturing of leases and prospects.
Gotcha. So what like I know a lot of people that own multifamily and maybe because I'm not like involved in it like that yet to understand it. Leasing someone that specializes in leasing is important because you have to do the lease up. You got to get people in. Like that's how
Absolutely.
you generate revenue. What does it take to get people in? Is it promotions? Is it 2 months free? Like I know you got to do background checks and stuff like that, but I think there's a little bit more to it to kind of make sure they hit their targets every month or every couple months to make sure the lease
You're
is
hitting
up.
hitting a topic that is critical at all multifamily properties, which is getting the exposure you need, right? And so I think, there are multiple ways to do it. We've been involved in a lot of the promotional side of this in our past life as a company. At this point, the companies that we work with are finding they have enough traffic. They're just not closing on the prospects well enough. So for instance, they're getting, you know, 20 lease opportunities, 25 lease opportunities a month, and they're closing 3 when they should be closing 10 or 15, getting close to 50% or 60%. That would be
Right.
great. But th- the performance just isn't there. And it's think of it if you think of it as a continuum, the first point of contact all the way to getting the lease, there's so many places at which the prospect can be lost. And some
Gotcha.
of them are basic, just follow-up stuff. Some of them are discovery, trying to understand the person you're talking to. Discovery is really could be improved in most cases. Like understanding your prospect, knowing what's important to your prospect leads to the next step, which is benefit selling
Uh,
the prospect well inside and out. You know what's important to them. So you can talk about the things on your property that are important to the prospect. If you're not doing those two things, your ability to close that prospect is going to be weakened because you're not speaking to them about the things
mhm.
that are important to them. So, I mean, this is just logic 101 applied to leasing. That's all this is. And that's how we've designed our courses, basically.
Gotcha. My question is because your goal is to close 50, 60%. I get that. But isn't there like cases or scenarios where someone wants to stay at this multifamily but don't like something that's not available there, like an amenity maybe, or maybe they saw bad reviews online. Like, how do you get around that? Like,
It's interesting. There's always competition and there's always things you're trying to promote against, right? And there's things that
mhm,
are coming up and hurdles for you to closing a prospect. Typically, qualified prospect is looking for a home, right? They're looking for a place to live. They're looking for a place if they have a family to put their family. And if you understand your property really well, you will represent it well to the person. You'll know the schools in the area. You'll know the stores in the area. You'll know, it's convenient to this part of town if that's where they work. I mean, if they work from home, you'll be able to tell them about, how their apartment is wired and set up for a home office. I mean, there's so many ways to sell a property correctly that if it's not done correctly, they fall out of the prospect list. And that's where you lose them.
gotcha. No, that makes perfect sense. Like, I like how that's worded, and that's probably the key thing when anyone's trying to look for a place. Is there any like you mentioned cash out refinance for these multifamily
Mhm.
business owners, right? That's always key.
Yes.
Have you ever worked with any that just didn't listen to you guys and they're maybe hard-headed, stubborn, and they couldn't really get to whatever the outcome they wanted to?
You
Because we
know,
all have clients sometimes that kinda have a pushback where they
we've
don't
actually
listen.
fired clients before, so yeah, I've fired them in multiple businesses. It's okay. You'll survive, and everyone goes away. It's okay, but
Right, but,
in a relationship, you need to have an understanding, right? And you got to have common goals. If you're not pulling the same way on the rope, it's not going to work. It'll be a tug of war instead of pulling in one direction. A tug of war is not a good way to run a relationship.
Mhm. No, exactly.
I'll give you your readers, your listeners, what I think is a golden nugget as an investor. So here's an interesting thing that our data shows. So let's say you're a buyer or a seller of a multifamily property. Let's use buyers first. Okay. So you're trying to figure out, you're doing your due diligence. You're looking at balance sheets. What are their numbers? How are they doing? Look at the location, look at the physical condition of the property. You do all the things you need to do as a buyer. You check out whether there's financing available, all those things. Okay. When you look at the balance sheet and you see, hey, this company's doing this number, whatever the number is a month. Okay. And you say, okay, that's what they're accomplishing. To get that accomplished, our data shows whether, let's say they got 5 leases last month and they got 6 the month before and 4 the month before that and 8 the month before that. The balance sheet doesn't show you how many leases. It was not a batting average. Okay. So if you're a baseball fan,
Mhm.
it doesn't show you if they got 5 out of 20 or if they got 5 out of 6, right? Because those two
Mhm.
things would tell you a lot. 5 out of 6 would tell you they need more traffic. 5 out of 20 would tell me they're not closing well enough and that
Right.
there's opportunity in that building, because if they're not closing them, if you put a talented leasing team in there, they will close them. And so, if you're pricing out what you can offer for a property, if you think about it, you want to buy a property that's underperforming in leasing, gets a low leasing score, because then there's tons of room for improvement. Just
Improvement,
put
yeah.
a competent group in there and you're going to make more money. The
Hmm.
opposite's true. If you're selling a property, you want to be maximizing all your leasing opportunities. So you're selling at the highest number possible. But
Right.
then, all of this is just data, right? It's just stuff that you can use as a buyer or seller. And I think it's a valuable nugget anyway. So I think people will start using it that way.
No, definitely. Data is always the most important part of any business, and I think you guys can track that very well. Peter, I did have a question though, because with multifamily, people come and go, right? They lease for a year, whatever, you know, they move on. They find the next one.
Yes.
What's your take on that with multifamily owners and how to, I guess,
Stabilize.
maybe, yeah, like
Yeah.
how can they
We think about
handle
stability all the time. It's really actually one of our key goals for multifamily. And so if you think about the leasing, I'll get to the actual renewing resident. That's actually an outcome from stabilizing your leasing force. In the multifamily world, according to National Apartment Association, between 2 and 3 changes in the leasing role per property per year. That's heavy, heavy turnover. That's instability. When the leasing agents turn over that quickly, it doesn't help with resident renewal, because the people that signed them to their lease are not there at many times. And so some of that stability is brought to the office and the property by having the same people doing the same thing over and over again. Because I know I've leased apartments. When you lease an apartment, that person you've created somewhat of a bond with. And when you
Mhm.
walk by the leasing office, you say hi to that person. And if you got a problem, you might go into that person and say, "Hey, can you help me get this done on the project, on the property or something?" And so when that person's not there any longer, there's no you lose that continuity. You lose that sense of home, that sense of, I know this person, they can help me. By strengthening the leasing position, by giving it more focus, you can really stabilize an overall property. And you'll stabilize your revenues, number one, but you'll stabilize your residents renewals as well. And so it's really kind of critical to, and by the way, when you have a stabilized property, you're treated better in the financial markets. You'll get higher cap rates when people are buying. Sorry, lower cap rates, higher multiples on earnings if you're selling, and you'll get better interest rates from lenders because you're stable. It's literally the stability is a key. And your point was a good point, which is you want residents to want to renew. You want lenders to want to renew with you. You want everybody to want to renew with you because they can count on you, right? And so how do they count on you? You have a stable workforce that knows what it's doing. And so by training up your leasing team, by the way, who's the first person you meet when you go to see a property? The leasing, right? Of course. So they're the tip of the spear. They're setting the tone for the property. If that person's changing out every 3 or 4 months, that's not good. It's not good for the value on that property.
Mhm. Gotcha. What's your take on these bigger companies, property management companies, um, putting their staff in place and
It's a great
kinda
question.
doing what they've been
I
doing what
I I have a take on it, and it's not a good one. Let me see if I can phrase this politically correct. I think owner managed properties where the owner has its own team on staff and they care about the value of the property and how residents are treated. I think those tend to be the best run places. The highest score attained by anyone and the highest average score of all properties we've tested by anyone was an owner managed property. And so,
Okay,
an owner managed company. And so they tend to take things more personally because the bottom line goes into their investors and their pocketbooks, as opposed to right now, about 2/3 of all multifamily apartments are managed by third party management companies, large
correct.
third party management companies. And on the other hand, they don't have a stake in the game and they're really just operational. They're trying to run an efficient, profitable for themselves company. And so I'm I'm still waiting to find that third party management company that wants to be better than all the rest. If there is one out there that wants to be better than all the rest, we want to work with them because the general sense to me is they're working month to month and paycheck to paycheck, and it's a profitability thing for themselves. I don't begrudge them a chance to make money, but listen, when you own something and when you don't own something and manage it, those are two different things.
Mhm. 100%. I agree. Good take on that. Also, I always was curious about that, and then when you're between your company and third party, that's a good perspective on it. Um,
Yeah, you can outsource. So they outsource in those cases. They're outsourcing their.
every
An owner will hire a property management company. One of the 15 things they're trying to get them to do is lease up their property. Unfortunately, if you ask the property management company, to put an order to the things of importance, leasing doesn't come to the top of the list. So it isn't about money for those companies. When it's about money, it should be about money for the owner, right? It's about the customer experience for the owner, which will turn into better revenues for them. But it's hard to get a great customer experience when you have someone that doesn't have, I call it, skin in the game.
do you feel like if the multifamily owners had their in-house team or used your company, do you think I know it's kind of biased, but I've seen a lot of them just have bad reviews online. Like if you could look up every community out there, I'm pretty sure they got lower than 4 stars
Hmm.
on average. On average. Do you think by having your approach and having in-house as well, or one or the other, does that improve?
I do.
Like, yeah,
I think so. And I think, the companies, when we worked with companies and brought our people in, the stars went way up. So I think the leasing person and the leasing team on these properties really do have an impact on public perception, right? On the star ratings. If it's on Google or whoever, it doesn't really matter. Any of them are rating. So we've seen major improvements from the twos to the mid to high fours And that's a big jump. So look, it all starts with the person you meet first. So let's start with that person and let's make them great and make them happy and make them feel appreciated and give them a career path. By the way, here's an interesting tidbit for your listeners. What happens when a person shows real talent in leasing in multifamily? You know what happens to them?
They leave?
You know where they get promoted? Outside of leasing. They go from leasing, where they're really good, to typically like an assistant manager's job where they sit behind a desk and look at numbers all day. And so I'm not quite sure that's a really good career path for leasing people. And so we strongly suggest to our clients and anyone that will listen to us that that a clear career path is created within leasing, within the leasing function. So if they're good at leasing on the front line, they might become a leasing director and then a leasing manager, maybe a leasing regional manager. And so pay attention to leasing as an important function of the operation. And so anyway, we so focus on the revenue side. Everybody else is focused on the cost side. And by the
Yeah.
way, if someone uses us as an outsource in terms of leasing training and leasing consulting, that's a cost savings. They don't have to hire in-house and carry the 30% carry on the employees. I mean, it's a savings to actually hire us, have us run your leasing training, and you'll actually see a savings on the cost and you'll see an uptick on your revenues. So it's actually kind of a win on both sides.
Yeah, sounds like it. That's a good way to put it too.
Thank you.
Peter, what's your plan for the rest of the year, man? We're, 2025 still
We're
chugging
focused.
along.
So my personal plan is to focus on Rev, and I've got some other real estate developments I'm doing, which I'm happy to talk to you about in Connecticut. But in terms of focus on Rev, we're really kind of focused on the mid market because the larger companies in multifamily usually have training departments, and those
Okay.
departments are really embedded. And I think they're a little bit territorial. If you got one that isn't territorial and is willing to use our tools and just take them and run with them, that's great. We're happy to have that happen, and that's certainly one of the things we do. We outsource our tools. So, but on the other hand, if you go to a kind of a mid market company that has 5,000 units to 15,000 units, those companies typically don't have a whole training department that's geared towards leasing. And so we could be outsourced to them. So we'll be focused on the mid market. We'll be trying to get the word out to those people various ways, including
Mhm.
talking on podcasts and, but going, attending conferences and doing some advertising and running some promotions. And so Rev is, and we're really focused on AI, and we're going to be continuing to improve our courses. Right, that's not a stagnant tool that we have. We have kind of our second generation already built, and we're working on our third generation using a lot of AI in terms of our training courses. Um, just keep moving, keep applying AI. I think one of the things that for sure your listeners need to be paying attention to this because I heard it somewhere and I pay attention to it and I see it every day. If you're not on the AI train, you better, get down the tracks a bit and jump back on the train when it comes into the station because it's here, it's moving, and anyone that's not on it in the next year probably is really in trouble with their business.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of people don't know that AI is basically it's like the new trend. It's not even a trend, it's just gonna be the new standard,
Exactly.
and it's gonna help you, if anything, to improve processes and just operations, things in between, so that's a good way to put it. So I totally agree with you on that one.
Yeah, and we're working on it every day. We're feeding data into AI every day to just
That's so
have
cool.
it learn and have it become part of our process. Part of our assessments. I mean, almost all of our assessment will be AI driven. We'll have only human on one portion of it, but all of our analytics are going to be AI driven, and it's just the on-site tour that we're going to have a person go in and gather the data. So otherwise, it'll be AI driven, and we're building it right now.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. AI driven. Peter, do you have any kids?
I do. I have two daughters.
$2? And they're of age, I'm assuming?
Yes, one is they each have a daughter, so I have two daughters and two
Okay.
daughters, and
Oh, congrats. Congrats.
the moment. Yep, they're of age and they're both in the workforce. So I'm proud of that. The fact that they're working people.
Man. You built a lot of businesses along the way. You're an entrepreneur by heart, man. What did you teach your two daughters while they were growing up? What did you instill in them to make sure they can prosper and teach their kids?
Well, I won't take full credit because my wife is a working maniac too. So
Of
maybe more
course.
than I am. So I saw a working mom and a working dad. So I think that probably, I think, it's interesting about kids. They learn more from watching you than listening to you.
100%.
The fact that we were actually working hard, I think it meant something to them, and they've modeled themselves after it, which is good. And kind of a couple of cool stories about the kids. So we lived in a town in DC area called Great Falls, which is a pretty affluent town, and they went to public high school, which was a public high school in name only because the kids, it was a very high performing public high school, and a lot of the kids got cars given to them when they were 16. Now that didn't happen to me, and it wasn't going to happen to them. So what they got was the ability to ask mom and dad to borrow the car, and so that was lesson one when they turned 16. Lesson two was I expect you to get a job. And so the day they were able to work, they both went out looking for jobs and they came back with jobs. And so from age 16, because I got a job when I was 16, and I had many, many jobs when I was 12 and 13, also cutting grass, shoveling snow, you know,
Okay.
caddying,
I like.
everything I could do to make money. So we instilled a real work ethic on our kids. I think some by talking about it, but mostly about by our actions. And so
Actions.
really proud of both of them. They're fine women and good moms and good wives, I think. You know, I don't live in their houses, so I can't really say for sure, but it seems like they're happy.
Mhm. Gotcha. No, I love it. I love the approach, man. It's totally true. Workforce and working hard, that's a good thing to learn and pass on, definitely. Peter, what's the best way for people to reach out to you, man, to learn more about Rev Leasing, to connect with you, to get on a call with you, like all that cool stuff?
Sure. So you can check out our website at rev-leasing.com. That's a good place to start. And if they've got any interest in you know, having looking at our products or talking to me or anything, just you can reach me at P. Roisman at rev-leasing.com too. So those are probably the two best ways to get a hold of me and check out what we're doing.
Cool, cool, cool. You heard it first, guys. I'll have the links below. Peter, you mentioned you're doing some real estate development in Connecticut. What exactly
Yes,
are you doing?
yes.
That's cool.
I got a medium sized project with, about 90,000 square feet of condos going in West Hartford, Connecticut, and some apartments and a little retail there in a parking garage. And then in East Hartford, Connecticut, we're working on a riverfront development there to connect to Hartford and tie that part of East Hartford into Hartford a bit. Because as you see in many, many places, across the river is really considered the same city, or same metropolitan area. Well, that's not true right now in Hartford. So we really want to tie the riverfront on East Hartford into Hartford. And so we're pretty close to launching. We've acquired about 30 acres of land, and we're pretty close to launching first apartment project over there, which will be a 19-story tower conversion from office. And then we've got medical office, retail, hotels, a lot of other things going on in that area, and that's called Port East Side. And we're busy, just busy every day.
Busy is good, man. Busy is good.
Yep, staying ahead of just want to keep busy, and it's funny. I watched a Netflix series called The Blue Zones, and you're way too young to be watching an anti-aging thing, but I'll share that with you now. So there are three things in common with the five areas on the planet that were studied. It was like Peru, Singapore. I think I think there was Japan. There was a place in Japan. There was a place in Europe. Maybe it was in Italy. There were five places picked, and they had the most uh, centenarians, 100-year-old people, and they kind of they reverse engineered it by seeing what the habits were of these people. So they went and lived with them in these 5 areas to figure out why they lived so long in this area, why there were more of them there than anywhere else. And
Mhm.
the 3 common things were stay in motion, right? That activity was really, really important. Your diet, and the diets were all different. So just a healthy diet of some form,
Right.
typically that, but high protein vegetables, grains, stuff like that. And then community, a sense of community. Could be family, could be friends, could be a combination of it, could be a club. Just those 3 things were common in all 3 areas. And so, in terms of just living well and living long, if you do those 3 things over and over again, I think I'm kind of a believer in that. And so I try to eat well, I try to stay active, and I definitely have a close tie with my family and my friends and my business partners. So, all of it, is all good karma.
Oh, good karma. I love it. I love it. Peter, one last question I like to ask all guests before ending the episode is, look, man, you had your first business at 23 and multiple ones even after that. You had 2 daughters, you're a family man, but what keeps you going every day when you want to give up?
Wow, that's a great question. I love that one. I'll tell you what, I've been true to myself. I've changed careers about 4 times in my overall career. And so I think the one thing that works for me is, well, first of all, I'm not a quitter on anything. I mean, I've been had a lot of challenges, not as many as some, and probably more than others, right? Somewhere in between. But I think there's some of it's nature, some of it's nurture. My personality and my nature, I'm just not a quitter. I'll fight to the death on anything. It's just who I am. But besides that, I think people can learn to listen to themselves too. And I think what you learn is after like whatever amount of time, it could be 5 years, it could be 15 years, or anything in between, when you've hit your wall in a career, and it might be, for me, it was time to make a change. And I love the idea of getting up every day and being excited about what I'm doing. So for me, I didn't want, and I left a couple of really successful careers. I mean, I left one where I made the most money I've ever made. And I just said, I don't want to do it anymore. I just literally said, I can continue to do this for the rest of my life and make a lot of money and be bored out
Mhm.
of my mind doing the same thing over and over again, or I can go do something else. So I took a year. I looked around. I talked to my friends. I talked to people in businesses, and I just tried to figure out what I wanted to do. I had the luxury of not having to work that time, which was really a luxury. And I had saved some money, and my wife was working, and so it wasn't critical that I grab a job right away. So if you have the luxury of taking a month or 2 or 3 to think about what you want to do and look around, I would say take it. Look, listen to yourself. If you're literally not excited about getting up every day, go find something that will excite you to get up every day. And that's the best advice I can give anybody.
Well said. I love it. Peter, man. Love the approach. I even only heard it great from the great Peter Roisman, like Rolls Royce that we talked about earlier.
Yeah. I think I'm going to take you when I buy my Rolls Royce.
Hey, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. Peter, man, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your journey, what you got going on now. And I think RevLeasing.com, that can really help out a lot of multifamily owners that really need to level up, man. I think you guys are to go for that in this industry. But guys, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please reach out to me and I'll direct you to Peter and vice versa. I'll have Peter's link below for revleasing.com. That's rev-leasing.com. And Peter, man, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Terry, it's great to talk with you. Great to meet you. I wish you all the success in the world.
Appreciate it, man. Guys, till the next episode. Peace out.
Take care.